Hi, my name is Alexey Borisenko. It's a DevNet Decoded series. In this stream, we're going to talk about sandbox capabilities, technologies, and features with Joseph Kearns, engineering technical leader at Cisco. Please leave your questions in the comments. Hi, Joseph.
Hey, Alexi. Thanks for having me on. My name is Joseph Kearns. I work on the DevNet Sandbox team as a technical leader. Um, Primarily responsible, my team is for deploying sandbox environments, testing them, deploying them to our portal. I also look after some networking and security pieces of the sandbox as well. Um, in Sandbox, our primary aim is to provide lab environments to anyone who wants to play with Cisco APIs. So what we would do is we would work with each Cisco BU and developer advocates like Alexi and a few others to scope out new sandboxes, what people are looking for, what new APIs are available. We would then spend some time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks usually, for a sandbox build to gather all the requirements, check all the use cases, build the VMs, all the automation, and then deploy it through the various stages of testing um, to our portal. And then we maintain after that with the BUs and DAs. So it's a multi-step process. We also look after support. So we have a support forum in case there's problems with anything. And we spin up a lot of labs for events. Events would be like Cisco Live Melbourne, just gone, or some of the bigger events like Cisco Live Europe and Cisco Live Amsterdam. So there's a lot going on in Sandbox. It's a small, tight team. We have a lot of requests coming in, and we get through as many as we can. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay, Alexi. I'm going to,
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go through the portal and show you how to reserve a lab. It's pretty simple. And then going to show you the backend, some of the backend stuff, how labs are built, what tools we use, stuff like that. And we're going to go through one or two more interesting sandboxes. I know Alexi worked on CDO, which is now SCC, and I think our most popular lab is CML. And any questions, just put them in the chat. I think we can see those, and we can address them at the end if we have time. One thing I will warn you about, I can only share tabs right now for some reason. This is my first stream with Alexi, so I can only share tabs for some preferences reason, but it should work okay. So let's just this is the Sandbox site on DevNet. Some information here about interesting sandboxes. You can read through this in your own time. We only have 30 minutes, so I won't go through it all. But if you want to launch the portal, you just hit launch Sandbox. And I will bring that up. Okay, and here is our catalog. So each of these tiles is a specific sandbox. So it's pretty easier to drill down into what we have in, say, the security side. We have CDO, which we'll look at later, secure network analytics, which was previously StealthWatch, Firepower Management Center. You can log into an FMC and play with the APIs. You can deploy an FTD, a private FTD, and play with the APIs as well. We have an extensive ICE sandbox, which are built with the ICE BU, looking at all things Ansible. And we have the concept of always on as well. So there's a bunch here. I'll let you go through these yourself when you have time. Again, lots of IoT stuff, IoT Control Center, some collab stuff as well, Collaboration 14, and we also have a Contact Center lab, which is very popular. We also have a lot of networking stuff, XRD, NSO, iOS XE on Cat 8 KV. So there's a lot of stuff here. We've actually removed a little bit lately, which has gone end of life, but we're constantly adding stuff to it as well. I want to talk just briefly about the concept of always on and reservable. So we have the concept of always on labs. These are labs which are publicly available. You don't have to reserve them as such. They're for simple API calls. You don't have to actually spin up a lab yourself. So the lab is actually up all the time. It's a public URL. We provide the username and password, and you can log in and make API calls. It helps us scale as well. And a lot of people just want to do some simple API calls. So it works in that way. So we have ACI simulator always on, all the way over to ICE always on, if you want to make some ICE API calls, and SD-WAN as well. So clicking into these, you can see it brings up instructions. There's some more information here as well. But the actual URL for the sandbox, say in this particular case, is here. So we can click on that. I can actually bring up the SD-WAN. So SD-WAN is available. You can log in using the username and password. These are read only. Okay, so a lot of these are used by multiple people. We don't allow people to go in and change things. It could affect other users. So just be aware of that. If you want a completely private environment to yourself, we have what's called the reservable labs. And these are labs, the majority of our labs are reservable. So back to the catalog, just get rid of that label and hit reservable. So again, these are labs which you can spin up. We actually spin them up in our data center on a private VLAN. We give you VPN access. Sometimes we spin up cloud accounts as well. So in the instance of CDO, we would SCC, we would spin up an SCC tenant specifically for you and give you access. We also have Meraki sandboxes, which spin up a Meraki environment and give you access, and a few more as well, like Umbrella. Umbrella is another one. So you want to click in here. Let's just pick one. Cisco Modeling Labs. Yeah, let's click in here. Again, it brings up the instructions, all the instructions you need to know on how to access the environment, spin it up, all the IP addresses you need to access the primary servers. We also have what's called a dev box in here as well, which is kind of a general purpose Ubuntu server that you can access. And this has a bunch of tools on it that you can use in conjunction with the sandbox. In this particular case for CML, we have a sample topology, which you can look at, access all the nodes as well. Getting started guide, all the network devices, access instructions, and then to reserve it, just hit launch. Okay. We select the duration you want it for. Let's just hit 2 days and launch. Okay. So I'm an admin right now. So when you guys spin up a lab, you're not going to see what's happening here, but that's okay. I'm going to bring you through briefly what happens in the back end, and then we're going to come back to CML and CDO. So in the back end, we have the concept of what's called grains. So these grains are basically very small pieces of executable code that do a specific task. So each of these boxes here is what we call a grain. So this VLAN ID grain, all it does is select a free VLAN. Okay. Once we select a free VLAN, we use Netbox for our single source of truth. It's an open source piece of software. Stores all our IP addresses, all our VLAN information, tenants, backend IPs. So once we know the VLAN, we can pull in all the information from here. from our netbox instance. Then we start interacting with vCenter. We use vCenter ESXi virtualization. We create a specific vCenter folder, and that folder will house the actual, in this case, CML and DevBox VMs that we're spinning up for you. These are actually cloned from gold images. We create the DV port group in vCenter, which is linked back to the actual VLAN we select. Right now, these are cloning. Okay, that's going to take a while. I have one spun up, so we're not going to wait. Actually, I think the cloning is finished, which is good. Then we have a license piece, grain. This license grain, it actually licenses the CML instance. And then we have a simulation grain, which just kicks in afterwards. That loads in the simulation that I'll show you in a few minutes. Over here, we have the username and password for VPN. We use NSO for all our device orchestration in Sandbox. So it's kind of a gateway to all our devices. We load the VPN information onto NSO, and then it pushes it down to the ASAV. Then we have, what else is here? We have an ACL, which specifies what kind of access list we provide on the ACL, what kind of access we provide the user, what IP addresses have internet access, what ports are allowed. In a majority of sandboxes, we have a delay time, and that's just to let VMs come up. So CML might take a while to come up. Something like SD-WAN, some of the bigger nodes like ICE take a good 10 minutes to come up after they're cloned. And then we have the VPN at the end is initiated. So these are all done by Terraform. So you can see here, if we click into, let's say, CS VLAN ID, you can down here to apply, you can see that we've selected a VLAN of 136. Okay, if you go over here to the DV port group, this is the DV port group, which will be created on vCenter. So all of our VMs will actually be connected to this DV port group. So that's the back end. Again, there's a lot of as well as Terraform, we have a lot of Ansible going on here in the background, a lot of Python configuration. We're moving towards more of what we call a kind of a base asset, base image format, so that each of these VMs will be of their very, very, very basic, no configuration loaded when we spin them up. All the configuration will be loaded on using specific grains during the build process. That just means that we can use this CML base asset in any other lab. Okay, it's a clean CML instance. That's the same for DevBox. We just spin up a general purpose Ubuntu server, and then we can load on different packages with different grains. It just reduces down the amount of VMs that we have to maintain in our data center, and it makes upgrading an awful lot simpler. We can upgrade a single, say, CML, and that single CML can then do across multiple sandboxes. We don't need multiple CML images. It just makes everything a lot simpler, especially for a small team like ours.
Yeah, a lot of services you mentioned to spin up one sandbox. You mentioned about NSO, a couple of Terraforms. What if there is an issue with spin up one grains in this structure? What's happened?
Yeah, it depends. So usually the sandbox will fail spin up. We have tested these a lot, and the grains are usually pretty solid. Like the netbox grain, VC resources, they're usually pretty solid. Sometimes we have problems with cloning. Okay, something might go wrong on the cloning instance or on NSO. So a certain pod may not be synced back to NSO, which will cause it to fail. The best thing to do in that instance is just to end it and start it again. You can go to the forum and let us know that it's happened, but that's what we actually tell people to do. Just end it and spin it up again. More likely than not, it will come up okay. If not, we'll troubleshoot on our side.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, so that is the back end. Again, we could be here for 2 or 3 hours. I could show you ESXi. I could show you Netbox. We also have we use GitLab for source control. So all of these labs have their own repo, and each repo has its own number of branches. We actually have, you can see here, a number of branches here. We have a space. Sorry, we have spaces for events. That's where we spin up labs for events. We have a staging area down here. That's where we test various upgrades for staging, and then we can push them to main, which is our DevNet space. Okay, we can go back out here for a second to self-service. One of the labs I wanted to show you today, Cisco CML. I'll come back to that in 1 second. One lab which I'd spun up earlier. A lot of these labs take 10-15 minutes to spin up, so I have them pre-spun up. One of the labs is where is CDO or SCC as it's now called. We're going to be renaming all these. So CDO, it's a cloud solution for managing security devices. We actually use CDO to manage a lot of our ASAV devices. We have a lot of ASAVs that we need to manage. So we actually decided to create a sandbox along with Alexi's help and the BU. So what we do here is once the lab is spun up, we actually create a CDO instance for the user. Okay, we provide username and password, login URL, username and password. We also provide an API token if anyone wants to make API calls to the actual tenant. We also spin up an FTD in our data center that you can onboard into your SCC instance. So we provide VPN, username and password to get into that actual FTD. The FTD exists in our data center, but you can onboard it onto your tenant. So I'm just going to show you the actual tenant once I logged in. To save a bit of time, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Share again. Share. So this is what you get when you log into CDO. Okay, we have one FMC at the moment, which is not onboarded. It's going to take a while to sync. It's offline at the moment, but this is the FTD, and we also spin up a cloud controlled CDFMC, which is a cloud-based FMC service that you can control the FTD from. So there's a lot going on in the sandbox. It's very useful to get used of SCC. It's a very powerful tool. We use it all the time. You can change policies on the FTD. You can pull config, push config. You can upgrade as well. And they're constantly adding different features. Yeah, Alexi, anything you want to add? I know you're involved in this build.
Yeah, I can add that all that you mentioned you can do using API, like claim devices, spin up cloud CDFMC, all using REST API, and it's really good, as well as run CLI commands, track policies, and you also show graphical user interface of secure cloud control, and we also ask users to try and to play with Cisco AI Assistant
Yeah.
Graphical user interface here and with Cisco Assistant API if they want to integrate it with their own apps.
Yeah, very useful sandbox, and it's one of our newer ones, and it's getting some good usage. So let me stop sharing for a second, and I will actually share the portal again. Another lab which I would like to show is probably our most it's our most popular lab is Cisco Modeling Labs. So this is a tool for building and testing network simulations. A lot of people use this for, say, um, if they're doing CCNA, CCNP exams, they would create simulations. We actually provide a simulation as well that they can look at. They can view all the running config, change interfaces, do anything they could do with actual hardware. So I've already one spun up here. Let's just go to environments again, select my own. Let's go to Cisco Modeling Labs here. And this is the one I just actually spun up. Okay. Again, I went through this. I went through the instructions earlier on. Everything is there that you need. To get access to this, there's a quick access link. And this is, let me just connect to the VPN. Okay, we use Cisco Secure Client for VPN. And just go down here, the main CML servers 10.10.20.161. That's just loading. And I will share that piece. Okay, so this is CML. Let's just log in. Developer. Okay, so this is our default lab that you can look at. This is built by my colleague Saad Ahmed, who primarily looks after our CML stuff, all the upgrades and interactions with the BU. So you can log into each of these. We also have a dev box here as well that you can log into and access all these nodes from. The nodes that we have a bunch of nodes. We have ASAV. We actually removed ASAV, but a lot of people weren't happy with that. So we actually put it back on again. But we have certain resources. CML can be a huge VM if you let it get out of hand. There's a lot of big nodes in there that we had to remove. In order to scale, we had to remove some of the bigger nodes. So right now we have Cat 8KV, CSR 1000V, we have IOL routers. There's Ubuntu, Linux. There's a T-Rex. T-Rex is a load platform, I believe. And we have some WAN emulation. So as well as the actual default lab, people can create their own lab as well. We can add a lab here. We can add an CSR 1000V, drag it in. We can add an IOL. Okay, we can start it up. Start these two. Connect them. Again, we could be here. We could have a full streaming session on CML, which actually would be a good idea at some point. But it's very powerful. One of our most useful labs. A lot of people use this. We have well over 100 used every day, and we could scale up into the hundreds if we had the resources in the back end. Hopefully, we will soon. But that's CML.
Yeah, I have some things, and we received a few questions, also connected with CML. Yeah, Jock Reed asking about how many people use the CML. You already addressed this, like around 100 per day. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah, it can be. We have a certain limit on it, um, but yeah, well over 100 every day. And you can reserve the lab for about up to 5 days max, which gives you a good opportunity to create your own environments. You can then back out the environments, save them locally, and load it back on later. But yeah, well over 100 every day.
Yeah, I have some. A few more questions. What about Meraki sandboxes? What all technologies do you have in Meraki sandboxes?
So we have a Meraki always on sandbox. What what we do is we have a Meraki organization, and then once you launch the sandbox, we add you into that organization as a read-only user. So you can play with APIs, get used of the Meraki dashboard. It's pretty limited, but it gives you instant access. We also have a private environment. So we have a how would you say it? We have a gold. I guess that's one way of putting it. We have a gold Meraki organization which we clone. We actually clone the organization and add you into it. So you're the admin for the organization. We then have a bunch of virtual devices which we add into the organization that you can use. The only problem is we only have a certain amount of virtual devices, so that limits the amount of labs we can concurrently deploy, which at the moment is 5. And we could have 25, 35, and it will still be um, in use. So that's something that we need to look at. We need to expand the Meraki stuff because it's very popular. It's just it's kind of limited at the moment by the amount of virtual devices we have.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the next question. So you can create custom sandbox environment as well?
Not specifically. We work if someone came to us and asked us to create a custom lab. It's usually the BU that comes to us for that, or a DA. But custom labs, it's something we're looking at in the future. I think the actual concept of base images and base assets will make that an awful lot easier. It will let people basically drag and drop in their own VMs. But we're a little bit away from that right now. So custom sandboxes, it all depends. If the BU need a custom sandbox, we can build it. If the DA need a custom sandbox, we can build it. But general users, that's kind of out of scope.
Yeah, I ask our audience to leave comments in YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Twitch, and Twitter, which is X now. The next question from Martin. One of the biggest challenge we have is getting access to labs that have some scale to them and have traffic on them that looks a bit like the real world. An example might be a 30-site Meraki network with a good mix of MX, MR, MS, and MGs. DevNet doesn't seem to cater for this, sadly.
Yeah, it's difficult because our primary aim is to provide access to the APIs. We're just not large enough. The sandbox is just not large enough to cater for all use cases. We don't have the resources to do that. So it's APIs that we specifically cater for. and we have to come up with kind of general purpose labs that meet a number of use cases that people can use. I mean, we've had that question before. We've tried to help people out as best we can. But it gets to a point where we just say, listen, we don't have the resources to build that or to support it. So yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah. The next question from Jock. You are using Terraform, Ansible, and Python config. Are you using any containerized or Kubernetes environment to run the workloads for the sandbox environments?
Yes, there is we use K8s in the back end to spin up all the labs. It's all containerized in the back end. We have one or two people who specifically look at that. Alison Butler, Mike Mackay is another guy. Is my manager is actually looks at that as well. But yeah, so all the workloads are run by K8s in the back end.
Yeah, thanks. We addressed all questions that I find for now. Maybe you want to share something else?
I think that's it. I think we only had 30 minutes. Let me see. Let me just go back here. I guess there's a number. I guess I can talk briefly at the end of this by the number of the challenges we have when we're creating sandboxes. The main challenge is just resources. We only have a limited number of people who can spin these up. It takes 4 to 6 weeks. Each sandbox is kind of bespoke. They're all different. It's very difficult to spin them up quickly. A lot of them need a lot of work and a lot of automation. Another difficulty would be events. We have to support a lot of events, live events coming up to Cisco Lives and stuff like that. So they take a lot of effort, a lot of coordination. But it's specifically resources. I mean, we could scale up a lot more. It would make life an awful lot easier. We don't have a scheduler right now as well. That's something that we need to look at. And right now it's kind of first come, first serve when you're reserving a lab. So I think that's it, Alexei, unless there's any more questions.
Yeah, let me check. I have one question. Could you please share about upcoming sandbox features and capabilities?
Yeah, so one thing that we're looking at is the concept of workflows. Okay, so it's not actually included yet in any of these labs, but we're actually looking at it. Alison Butler is looking at it right now. So that will allow us, once a lab has come up, you'll actually be able to turn off and turn on all the VMs, maybe create new VPN users, hard reboot, soft reboot, do a bunch of stuff that you can't do right now. So we're looking at that. We're also looking what's in the pipeline. We're looking at a Splunk sandbox in the future. We're actually talking to the Splunk team about that. Maybe some sandbox with machine learning capabilities or AI, but these are all in discussion. Right now, with the team we have, we're just maintaining what we have. We have removed some sandboxes, unfortunately, that we cannot maintain. But we're adding ones all the time as well. So, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in the pipeline. A lot of features in the portal that have yet to be kind of rolled out. But I'll let the community know when these are active.
Yeah, I have some things. I also ask for those who will be watching as a recording, you can also leave comments on the related platform, and we will try to address your comments and feedback after the stream. Yeah, and let me check one more time.
Sure.
Yeah, Samit from India, good to go. Yeah, thank you.
We're also looking at the portal has a very good API, which we're going to look at as well, maybe integrated into the DevNet portal. We've talked about this before. It would be an awful lot easier if it would be possible to spin up labs directly from the portal. That would make things a lot easier for our users. Also, always on labs. We're going to change the format of the always on labs. So instead of having a static username and password that everyone uses, which is it's a security risk, we're going to have unique usernames and passwords depending on the user that comes in. So people will launch, and when they launch, they'll get a unique set of credentials that they can access the Always On Lab. It just takes time to build up the automation, but we're going to be seeing that over the next few months.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Joe, for sharing this with us and for answering questions from our community and from our colleagues. Appreciate your help.
That's no problem, and you can reach out to me directly. We also have a very good Sandbox community forum. The link to that is in all of our Sandbox instructions, or else reach out to me directly with questions. I'm happy